Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Diane Hayden with Natural Nutmeg Magazine, and welcome to our Lunch and Learn live video interviews with our expert contributors to Natural Nutmeg on how to cope with the COVID-19 situation, and also uplifting interviews about topics related to living a healthier lifestyle and how to integrate more holistic tips into your lifestyle on a daily basis. So I'm excited to have with me today Lori Carpenos, LMFT. She is the founder of Three Principles Therapy. She works with couples, families, individuals, a variety of adult and young adult groups, and executives wanting to improve their corporate culture. She is the author of a young adult book, It's an Inside Out World, the co-author of The Secret of Love, and co-facilitator for Caribbean retreats and a contributor to the Secret of Love podcast. So welcome, Lori. Thanks so much for being with us today. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah. Thanks so much for inviting me, Diane.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
we have a lot of things to talk about today. The most important one is the therapy that you do, Three Principles Therapy. And I guess I want you to give us like just a little background. How did you create that, and what does it entail, and what can people expect when they come to work with you?
Well, let's see. Kind of dates back to a long time ago when I was, I guess, in my 20s and part of my 30s when I was not a happy camper. I was not doing well myself. I was an art teacher at the time in a junior high school. And although I had everything in my favor, a great school to work in, and I really enjoyed the students I was working with, and I had a wonderful teacher next door. We're friends to this day, even though we live miles apart and, you know, both retired from that profession. But the long story, making a long story short, because I could talk to you about this for a long time, I was searching for, I had been to different therapies. I was living in San Francisco at the time, which had a big, it was called Common Boundaries, a big, I don't, booklet, which was more like a book of all the different therapies available. And I was sampling them all, never finding relief from what I came to realize through my understanding of the three principles, which I'll explain soon, was just my own made up thinking about not being good enough, about not, you know, I should be this, I should be this much further along, I should have this, and I should have that by now, you know?
Yep.
Um, that kind of not good enough thinking.
Yeah, we all do it.
Yes, and it's so common. And people don't realize that just because we think something doesn't make it true. So then fast forward to 1985, by this point I was dragged to hear another lecture. Like, oh my gosh, I've heard enough lectures on mental health, and people, you know, my friends said, no, this is different. I promise you, this is really different. So I kind of went just to get them to stop nudging
Bugging
me.
you.
But I'll tell you what, I heard whatever I heard at the time in 1985. I couldn't put it into words what I heard, but I felt a feeling of relief that I had never felt before. So really, when I explain to the best of my ability, my current understanding of what the three principles entail, it's best for anybody listening to just shut your brain off. Which sounds so counterintuitive, right?
Right.
We listen with our brain, with our thought machine turned on, but you want to listen with your heart, with a feeling, because it's really through a feeling that people begin to understand. And I'll tell you, my understanding of innate health, because what we've found is these three very simple principles that explain how people take really a formless spiritual energy. So we have seen this as this is really what the field of psychology has wanted to, in fact, the father of psychology had said, in the 1800s, someday there will be principles that will make this a science that is useful for all, for every person. So essentially, through the years, as I explored more, when you have a shift, and so many things in my life shifted. For instance, I was a smoker. I was smoking a pack of cigarettes every day from the age of 16 after I
Wow.
meeted with a friend to teach me how to smoke so I could be cool.
Yeah, it was cool back then.
Right? Oh my goodness, the things we think and we don't realize that we make it all up.
Yeah.
So I woke up and I had such a shift after a year or two of trying to quit smoking in every way that was available back then. I woke up and I just had this realization, wow, what am I doing? I'm not a smoker. That's not who I am. And literally, if I tell you it was over, and this was after like 15 years of smoking, it had gotten up to, a pack a day, and I never had another urge. How do you explain that?
Well, I love the way you said that, because I do believe that with certain addictions, that really it's just about understanding who am I as a person and who do I want to be. And if you can do that, my mother has done the same thing. She quit smoking in a day, just like that. And science would say to you, oh, that's impossible. You have to go through like step down programs and blah, blah, blah. I don't believe that. I believe that if you at your core decide who you are, who you want to be, you can quit something as simply as that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's actually a colleague of mine wrote a book I just started reading. Only a few chapters into it. It's really, really good. It's called The Evolution of Addiction.
Mm.
Really, he talks so much about the spiritual aspect of, like you just mentioned, Diane, who we really are. Who we really are is not who we think we are. It's not our physical, like I call it, it's the automobile we're given to get us through this amazing creation. And we get to experience this amazing creation through, I'll explain the three principles, because if I give you and I will give you the words that are used to describe them, but the words are just pointers. The words point people to within themselves. And, we've heard this from so many people who have had major experiences in life, that to look within. So what does that mean, looking within? It's not within our brain. It's deeper. It's to a deeper intelligence that we are part of, and it's part of us. It's the same intelligence that wakes us up every morning. We don't have to think to do that. It's the same intelligence that's pumping our heart and our lungs. We don't have to think pump, pump, pump all day. But, it's the same intelligence that's popping flowers out of the ground right now as spring begins. There's no calendar in the sky.
Exactly.
There's no timer that's setting that off.
Right. The earth is not on like on a calendar system, daily calendar system. Like, oh, I need to do this today.
Oh my goodness. So, really these three principles, I'll give you the words, but you want to look beyond the words to what they point to. So the person who uncovered this did not have a degree in psychology, but yet it drew in a lot of people in the helping fields because they realized how much it helped them. And when you gain so much, what do? You want to share it with as many people as you can. So mind, thought, and consciousness are the names that were given with capital M, capital T, capital C, because what Sid Banks realized is that we are given the ability to think. What we think is an individual thing. That's what sets us apart from one another. But the leveling field, what proves that we all operate exactly the same. We're really the same. We all operate the same from the ability to think. It's built into us. And we experience what we think through consciousness, right? So we're conscious of what we think, we're conscious of the world around us. And consciousness is not saying, that's a negative thought, don't pay attention to it. With our ability to think, we can choose. Is this something I really want to be dwelling on now? Or is this something to table and wait until tomorrow? You know, like, did you ever write an email and say, I'm not sure I want to send this.
I better sit on it.
In the morning.
Well, yes, absolutely. I think though most people, maybe it's that they're not being present or conscious. Like most people will just fire off the email, and myself as well. And then later I might think, ooh, I probably should have sat on that. Like, because 99.9% of the time, if you sit on it and you wait 24 hours, or sometimes even a few hours, you'll go back and reread it and think, yeah, I don't really want to, this isn't coming out the way I really mean. I don't really want to say it this way.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we have so many ways to save ourselves. Another example might be, like we talked about addictions. And the thing about exploring these principles, and right now I can give you wonderful ways to look for yourself, to do your own self-exploration, is a nonprofit called 3PGC. It's the number 3. P stands for principles, G for global, C for community. 3 principles global community, which was started by a lot of people in the early days in the 70s, because Sid Banks found this, or uncovered this, you might say, uncovered this understanding through an epiphany that he had. And he would say, I can't believe I'm such an ordinary person. Why would something so extraordinary happen to this ordinary person? Sid had like a 9th grade education and was a welder. And he wrote more books, I think 6 books before he passed away. And then, so that was more books than books that he had read. He wasn't reading spiritual books like most of us were doing in the 70s and 80s, And I'll tell you, all those spiritual books I read, I understood them so much better once I understood how these 3 principles work together. And they are pointing us in the direction of our essence, who we really are. We're spiritual essence having a human experience. And so with a deeper understanding of this, people, myself included, begin to see, and, so I had these early days of depression. I was diagnosed by a therapist with dysthymia, which is long-term depression, basically. And, so I spent a lot of years in the old therapy back in the 70s with a really well-meaning psychologist, a Jungian analyst, in fact, when I was in San Francisco. And beautiful soul, but she had her own limited understanding of the spiritual essence behind life. So I came out of 4 years of that. I was able to say, well, I know why I'm depressed. My mother said this, my father did that, so it was like the blame game, innocently. I mean, we call it psychological innocence, when people say and do things that they don't realize is coming from their conditioned thinking.
Yeah.
Brain, the way they've learned to think. And so my world shifted, my whole world shifted. And over time, it incrementally, things just get easier. And, even going through, social distancing now, I just have such a, I'm grateful for the quiet,
Yeah. Many of
quiet
us are.
from
Many of
things.
us are.
So, so good.
So let me ask you this. I feel like depression, and maybe not in, this isn't the case for everyone, but I feel like for a lot of people, depression is really more our soul or our spiritual essence trying to communicate with us that there's something bigger that we need to do.
It's a beautiful way to look at it. There's a psychiatrist, a colleague of mine, another three principles practitioner in the Midwest, Bill Pettit. Not the, same name as Connecticut
Right.
doctor, but this is a psychiatrist in Phoenix, Arizona, and he talks about love letters. Like if we get a feeling of anxiety or we get feeling down in the dumps, that's a love letter alerting us to the fact that we're overthinking. We're caught up in our human thinking, the thoughts we're having. And if you take a step back and you realize, I'm the thinker, it looks like it's that person's fault or the event that didn't happen that I wanted to happen. But it's not those things. It's my experience of those things, given how I'm thinking about those things. I've had clients tell me, like someone said to me who's in a group that I provide for people we're meeting on Zoom now, just like this, because I have a conference room across from my office, right across the hallway, but can't meet there. So we're Zooming. And she said she was carrying around anti-anxiety medication, probably Xanax or something, for the longest time. She didn't even realize, she was cleaning out a purse to change her purse, and she realized, I don't even have that with me. Never mind the fact that I haven't needed it. I don't even have it with me anymore. Stuff like that happens, like people don't plan for it. They're not setting goals to make these things happen. I never planned to write a book. Holy cow. I wound up having 3 books written, one of which happened because somebody approached me at a Three Principles conference and said, I heard you were an art teacher. You want to help me write this curriculum for 7th graders that Safer Society Press asked me to write? And I said, yeah, sure. That's how life gets delivered when we're not busy looking for it.
Exactly. The problem is we're always busy looking for it. It's like,
Well, that used to be me. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh man, would I pound the pavement when I, thought I needed to make everything happen. And now it's just, if I feel like doing something, yeah, you check in with your heart, or there's a deeper knowing. We call it wisdom. Wonderful children's book, by the way, called Where is Wisdom? Written by Jack Pransky. I did a lot of work with Jack. He did long-term, we called them long-term trainings for social service providers in Vermont and in Connecticut. So we would do that for 6 weekends in a row, Friday night, Saturday, and half of Sunday. And people just shifted, to see people shifting their level of consciousness, really. As people look within, they go bypass the brain. The brain is physical. It's good for calculations, figuring out, what to buy for a recipe we want, figuring out the fastest distance between point A and point B. It's not good for figuring out relationships. And that's what people do. They try to analyze it and figure it out, and they go into the past and they dwell on it and they think about what could I have done differently. And of course we have the potential to continually evolve, and we look back and oh my gosh, I can't believe, like you said, I can't believe I sent that email out and I've done the same thing. But that's the beauty of further discovery. To me, this has by far been the most self-help that I've ever stumbled upon, and it's not, no techniques, no goal setting, no, it's just an understanding how we operate, how we function in life through mind, which is, big mind, supplying the energy, the source of everything, supplying our ability to think. And we have free will. We can think and believe in anything we choose. We don't have to believe in everything that comes through us, because we get random thoughts out of the blue, and sometimes they're really horrific. We don't have to contemplate them and think about them. And the funny thing is, like I notice this when I'm like walking the beach and listening to the waves, and maybe a negative thought comes to mind. It's like, don't bother me. I can't be bothered with this right now. I'm just enjoying this beautiful walk in nature, listening to the waves. And, we have the capacity to live our life like that.
I think not everybody realizes that, though. That's the catch. I think there's and that's what your training does essentially, is help people realize that you don't have to believe every thought that you have in your mind. But
Yeah.
that's novel thinking for a lot of people.
Right.
We're like, what do you mean? Like this thing up here, everything it says is true. What? I don't have to believe it? So
Exactly.
yeah, so I think that's where I'd like to go next with you is, you say when people are troubled and struggling mentally, it's because their thinking looks real, covering their innate mental well-being at that moment in time. The cure is understanding how our thought system works. So how do you help people with that?
Well, I listen for how people think, not the details of what they're thinking, not the content of what they're thinking, but how, we all have a tendency, like habits of thinking. Some of us are worriers. I certainly had done my share of worry. So, and also I had a habit of disappointed thinking. Like something would happen and I'd get really disappointed. I never saw that as my habit of thinking, my way of thinking. I always thought, well, that thing happened. Of course, I'm going to be disappointed. So then I'll give feedback to people as I start to hear their brand of thinking.
Let
That they're
me let me back up for just a second because I want to make sure people get this because that is fascinating to me. So you listen for how people think. For example, you listen for, are people a worrier? Are people worriers? Are they disappointed? Meaning, do they, are their expectations unrealistic? Maybe. What other things do you listen for? Like, what other characteristics do you see?
Yeah, I'm not listening for anything. That's a good point for me to bring out. I'm not listening for anything in particular. I'm my own brain. I want my brain, my thinking, to be as quiet as possible, because then I my wisdom picks things up. There's a deeper knowing that picks things up. And that's really what I mentor people in, how to listen to a deeper wisdom, their own deeper wisdom, and not their chatter.
Mm-hmm.
So I might pick up anger. A lot of people, they have their anger justified. The person cut them off on the road, or these things. Why do these things always happen to them? Well, that's because they're looking outside in at the person cutting them off, at um, these things that are happening to them. The three principles and understanding of these principles point people in the direction of inside out. So they begin to see that their world, their experience, whether it's anger, depression, sadness, loss, you name it, upset, bother. A lot of people get super bothered because they have this idea of how things should turn out and how people should behave and how they should be treated. And but the person treating them with disrespect or whatever is coming from their thinking. They're experiencing and explaining their thinking. They're expressing their thinking through their behavior. How they're thinking about things comes out as a behavior. And I'll tell you, when people start to really get a glimpse of this, how can you blame somebody? It's really hard to blame somebody when you realize, well, that was coming from them.
Right.
I'm glad I'm not in that state of mind right now. And I have compassion for them. I feel for them because I've been there. I know what it's like.
Yeah. It's not that someone is doing something to you.
Right, right. The only one that can do anything to us is ourselves
Mm-hmm.
with our own thinking.
And we should know that to be true. Here's a perfect example. It's why the same exact experience can happen to two people and they respond completely different to it. Like someone can get really upset about someone cutting them off on the highway, and the next person could be like, oh, whatever, that for whatever reason that person's in a rush and it's not about me.
Absolutely. That's so true. Yeah, that's a great example, right? Yeah, you see it in offices, where why is it that somebody in the office is cranky and people get really upset, and then there are other people who say, well, she's just cranky, sure.
Or it's just having a bad day.
Yeah, or just
like,
having a bad day.
boy, I'll tell you, if you're in sales, you learn this really quickly. And if you don't learn it, then you usually find yourself out of sales because you can't take it personally. I mean, you call a million people and sometimes people are nice, even if they're telling you no. Sometimes people are going to hang up on you. Sometimes people are going to yell at you. And you just have to realize that, okay, that reaction is not about me. That person could have, who knows what just happened before they picked up your phone call.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true that I love the term psychological innocence, because people are just behaving and speaking according to the thinking that's coming through them. And they're not aware of the fact that it's coming from the thinking that's coming through them. It's not coming from out there.
Right.
That's why this is called innate health, that there is an innate health that all people have, whether they realize it or not. When you strip away your thinking, like we get caught off guard, right? If you're in the middle of doing something you love and notice that you're smiling, well, you just were in the moment. You're in the moment. You're not thinking about the past, perturbed by something in the past, or you're not thinking about the future, hoping and wondering if something is going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. So what other tips do you have for people as far as, I guess, how to catch yourself when you start getting triggered or you start having these kinds of thoughts? What kinds of things do you tell people to look for?
Well, it's a great question because it's all in the feeling. Since we feel our thinking, if we're feeling annoyed or bothered or perturbed, that's a signal, like that love letter that Dr. Pettit talks about. That's a signal that will say, oh, got to quiet down my brain. Just got to quiet it down. So it's really like living life like a meditation. There was a psychologist, Dicken Bettinger, who is wonderful to YouTube. Dicken, Bettinger, Bettinger, I believe. He's in my book, The Secret of Love. He and his wife, I did an interview with them for the book. And he is a psychologist. He, at one point in his life, was meditating for 4 hours a day.
Wow.
Can you imagine? I mean, how do you even find that many hours in a day to, but he had this idea that his mind was so sped up that he needed that much meditation. He doesn't meditate at all. He doesn't sit to do a meditation, but he says what he's learned about the principles, mind, thought, and consciousness, that he lives his life more in a state of meditation because his feelings will guide him back to home. He wrote a book called Coming Home. Wonderful book. Yeah. That our feelings are a beautiful alert to us. But before I knew this, I used my feelings in a whole different way. I would say, oh, this feels bad. I really have to figure this one out. Right? Or
Mhm.
this is such a strong feeling. There must be something to know here, or I've got to understand my thinking rather than understand what's causing the thinking. What's causing the thinking is our ability to think anything, and we're conscious, so we experience whatever we think. That's a miracle, that we can experience creation and we can experience what we create. And we're also wired to think about what we're thinking. Like, is this really useful? Is this
Yep.
really good? Is this going to help anybody or anything? Or is it going to help me in any way?
Well, it all boils down to a choice.
Yeah. Yeah, very well. Very
Mhm.
well. I mean, it's amazing how we are constructed, how all of nature is constructed. It's, is really something to be in awe of. I have a big window out here and I can see, the trees leafing out and some flowering. It's such a miracle, and how many times I've taken walks in nature and I've just been so caught up in my own mind that I'm not even noticing what's around me.
Yep.
Either caught in the past or
In the
somewhere in
future.
the future, wanting something to turn out a certain way. The miracle of life is we never know how it's going to turn out. We have no idea.
Well, it would be boring, right?
Right.
If we knew. Now I know all those people out there who don't like change are probably thinking, no, it wouldn't be boring. I would love to know exactly what's going to happen. But no, I think ultimately it would be boring.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's part of the excitement of life, seeing what comes around the next corner.
Yep. Yep. And
Definitely.
even if it's not what we wanted or the way we wanted it, I mean, I believe that, everything, there is good in everything, and you just don't know it, in the moment until later.
Right. Oh, absolutely. There's one thing about um, aging that we can look back. It's a wonderful thing about aging. We can look back and say, wow, I remember when I wanted that thing to happen. And look what happened, which was so much better.
Right. Exactly. So tell us about your Caribbean retreat. And we're hoping we're all going to be able to travel. And I'm thinking positive that this is in November, right?
Yeah,
That
it
that
was postponed. We were ready to board a plane 2 days.
Oh gosh.
Within 2 days, when we started to hear, this was, the beginning of March or mid-March, I guess it was, because it was supposed to run March 14. And we had just heard, like, you really should not travel unless it's an emergency. And
Mm.
I'm so disappointed because this is such a beautiful, this just dropped, talk about things dropping in our lap. This dropped in my lap. What a gift. Someone who read The Secret of Love, Unlock the Mystery, Unleash the Magic, it's a long title, healed their relationship, happened to be going to this all-inclusive for the past 4 years and bringing groups out with him. He called me up. He said, would you like to run a relationship retreat out here? And, are you kidding? Yeah, of course. So that's what we postponed until November. So now it's November 14th to the 20th. And, if we need to postpone it again, we will. I did some intensives with couples who were going to come to on the retreat. So I worked with them, and they were. Here's an interesting point too. They were coming from the UK, and the week before they had been in Italy.
Oh, geez.
You know, what
Yeah.
a blessing that we heard, "Do not board a plane." At the time I was, oh, boo-hoo. But I figured, oh, well, we'll just postpone it. That's all. Life happens. It's how we experience life that matters.
Right.
Knowing that it's coming from our own thinking is the alert. We can choose to not, get upset about stuff.
Yeah. So it's a retreat for couples based on your book.
Well, I'm doing it with, I rotate people that I do this with. So the one in November is with also a 3 principles coach. She comes from Los Angeles, Del Addie Jones. If people go on my website, they'll see things from her as well that I post. And she has a niche. And she had experienced herself, and the 3 principles helped her rise above what was happening to her in her past, which is called narcissistic abuse and codependency. And because that healed so much in her and her relationship, that's how she teaches the 3 principles through that niche. But she's a 3 principles practitioner. If you look on 3PGC, then you'll see that, there's a place for all the practitioners around the world. I'm there, she's there. And so we're broadening it. We're broadening it to be just a retreat of well-being, because we're talking about the 3 principles. We're talking about innate health. We're sharing our own stories. We're sharing what we've seen. And we pair people up to do listening with one another, because that's I can't even say a lost art. I don't know if it's ever been an art.
Not in a long time.
I did our long-term trainings with social service people, educators and social workers. We spent most of every weekend doing listening exercises. People just loved it, because when you listen to somebody without thinking on your mind, without a lot of thought, you're just this pure consciousness, taking in what the speaker is saying. And people loved it because they would hear things that the speaker wasn't aware of. It was in the speaker's blind spot, that psychological innocence that they weren't aware of.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we meet in the morning for an hour and a half. We meet, after breakfast, we would have a meeting. We would have a meeting before dinner. And then people are free the rest of the time. They'll have our phone numbers, our cell phones. So if they run up against something, they'll call us while they're on one of the 6 beaches or one of the 11 restaurants there. I mean, what a great thing, right? We've been home making our own meals. I can't wait to have somebody else cooking a meal, every meal, for a week.
Exactly. So how can people connect with you and reach out and learn more? Do you want to send people to your website or any information you want to give us?
Sure. My website is the number 3, principlestherapy.com. Principles is PLES, which I don't even talk about the fact that it's not, follow these 5 principles, or it's principles like the principle of gravity. That's true for everyone, no matter where. No matter where you are or who you are, if you drop something, it's going to fall. No matter who you are or where you are, you're going to experience your own thinking. And so we have a million ways to describe that. We talk to people, about how to shut their brain off, basically, and listen with their heart, listen for a feeling, listen at a deeper level. Yeah.
Awesome. So threeprinciplestherapy.com, and people can learn, or they can connect with you there. They can learn about your retreat. Pretty much everything's on the website.
Yeah, absolutely. The retreat, it should be there. I'll have to give a look and make sure it's there.
Okay. But people can contact you, via email and phone or whatever through your website.
Right. There's a contact section, right? They can contact me through a
Great.
form. They fill out a quick form, and that's the best way to contact me.
Awesome. And I'm assuming you're doing virtual sessions right now, and
Right.
people can reach out to you for, for sessions as well, aside from information on the cruise.
Right. And I use a HIPAA compliance site. And the wonderful thing is, if people want to use their insurance benefits, insurance companies are waiving their co-insurance fee. So they'll pay me the full amount, and the client doesn't have to pay a copay.
Oh, that's great.
It goes until the end of May, at least, during social distancing. Yeah.
That's great to know. That's great to know. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been awesome, very informative, enlightening for us all. And we'll get everybody the recording. It'll be up on our website, naturalnutmeg.com. We email it out to all our readership, and also on social media at Natural Nutmeg Magazine. And I want to thank you so much, Lori, for being with us today.
Oh, thank you, Diane. Yeah, great talking with you.
Yeah, you too. Hope everybody has a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye.